Welcome back to Casual Gardening with Dustin. A couple of months ago, one of the first videos kind of restarting my channel, I did a review for this Palram Canopia Balance 8-foot by 12-foot greenhouse. And I'm really gratified by the response that I've had to that video. There's been a lot of interest in it, and I thought maybe it would be helpful for everyone who's checking out this greenhouse and seeing my review. Maybe you'd like to see how I feel about it 2 months on. Now, you may have noticed that the greenhouse itself looks quite a bit different from when I made that initial video, because I have a shade cloth on it now, and I've painted the sides white. And these are just some additional steps that I've taken to try to control the temperature in my greenhouse, and I feel like they were largely successful. I was able to grow in my greenhouse until just last week. My temperature peaked at 119 degrees Fahrenheit with my doors open and all my vents open, and I decided to move everybody out. And so all of the plants that I was growing in my greenhouse are now distributed out around in my garden, where it's just less hot. As I said in my previous review video, this is not a year-round greenhouse. It's not well enough insulated, and without some sort of air conditioning system or a powerful blower installed, it's just going to get too hot in the summer. So this is not, I don't think it's a strike against the design. It's just not a greenhouse that you can expect to use in July and August, which is, it's got to be okay. Now, I'm really happy with how this floor turned out. Pardon my mess. This was, up until last week, a working greenhouse, and as you can see, I was doing a fair bit of potting up, and I've got components over there for a drip irrigation system that I still need to install. Now, one thing I would like to say is, if you haven't bought this greenhouse yet, but you're considering it, do go for automated vents, because they've been open every day, which means that if you don't get the automated vents and you want to maintain anything like a regular environment in your greenhouse, you're going to have to make at least 2 trips to your greenhouse, one in the morning and one in the evening, to open and close your vents without automation. So do automate, and ideally automate every vent you add to your greenhouse. You won't regret it. In that first video, I talked about roof panels popping out, and it was just that one particular one there in the back. And I'm happy to say it hasn't happened since. I've noticed the structure has kind of settled a lot, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of firmed itself up under the influence of gravity and the shapes of the structures. And one thing I've done to facilitate that is I've gone around and I just loosen and then retighten the bolts to allow things to just kind of fall into place. And I've noticed that as I've just kind of let the greenhouse shift itself into a more stable configuration, it's gotten stronger. So that's something you may want to do if you get this greenhouse. Count on, over the course of time, just loosening and tightening some nuts, and you'll be happy that you did. Another thing I talked about is the doors, and how it seemed like the magnets were not adequate to hold the doors open all the time. Well, for the past more than a month, I've had the doors constantly open. It's been warm enough at night that I didn't need to close the doors to maintain a higher temperature inside, and I found that the magnets actually do a pretty decent job. So they're not 100%. A gust of wind can come along and blow them shut. It's not that bad. So that previous criticism from my video, I'm actually going to retract it. The magnets are fine. As things have settled, I've noticed the doors have gotten a bit jankier, but that's something that I can probably just kind of fix again by loosening some nuts and adjusting things and retightening them. This is a pretty easy greenhouse to troubleshoot, so I like that very much. Now, one thing I would like to say is, with all of my temperature control measures, with the louvered automated vent, with the automated roof vents, with the shade cloth, and with the white paint, If I leave my doors fully open, the temperature will run about 20 degrees Fahrenheit higher than the outdoor temperature. If I close my doors, even with all my vents fully automated, the temperature will tend to run 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than outdoor temperatures. Now that it's summer and we're getting temperatures up around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you can see why that might be a barrier to year-round use of the greenhouse. And I mean, it's not a design flaw. The greenhouse is doing what it's supposed to. It's trapping heat from the sun and being warmer. It's summer. I did not put weed barrier underneath my floor. And what you can see in this frame is some field bindweed that is growing up my shelves. And that's not the only field bindweed that I have growing into my greenhouse. In fact, I'm kind of wondering if maybe I ought to just close my doors and let it get to, I don't know, 140 degrees in there and just kill everything. So if you are assembling this greenhouse, before you install your floor, consider putting in a weed barrier. I think you'll be glad you did. Usually I don't like them. In this case, I strongly recommend them. Now, I do recommend, if you can, install a fan in your greenhouse. I did briefly have a solar fan installed in my greenhouse, and it worked really well. I really liked how it moved the air around. It didn't actually keep things very much cooler, but it made the temperature more consistent throughout the greenhouse, and it made it more habitable for me. So if you can, you will want to put a fan in your greenhouse. There is going to be a follow-up video in which I've purchased all the components I need to do a better solar fan that is less likely to break. It's not a greenhouse solar fan because I don't have $1,000 to spend on greenhouse equipment. But it's going to be jerry-rigged. But look for a follow-up video in the nearish future, probably closer to the fall when it's cool enough to work in here again. I'm going to be doing a solar fan install. Now, I also intend to do a one-year follow-up video, probably late spring 2024, where I'll just be going over what's been going on with the temperatures inside versus outside, how much season extension I actually got out of this, what it's been like growing in this in the spring. Unfortunately, when I did build this, it was too late in the season to get the full advantage of having my new greenhouse. That's all I wanted to add to what I've already said about this greenhouse. If you have questions about how it comes together and what the construction is like, you probably did not watch my first video. I'm going to make sure that this video links to that one and vice versa. Also, please feel free to drop any questions you have about this greenhouse in the comments. I would love for this to be a helpful discussion where we can talk about it. And I want to thank you for joining me in my garden today. I hope you have a wonderful time in your own.